What happens when South Africa's most powerful women take their empires global and America starts calling? From Hollywood stages to Harvard boardrooms, these self-made moguls are rewriting what it means to be rich in two worlds. Stick around till the end because the woman who sits at number 1 is pure cinematic gold. Number 10. Irene Charnley, the telecom transformer. If you think labor unions and billion-dollar telecom empires have nothing in common, Irene Charnley is here to prove you wrong. She started as a trade unionist, negotiating wages in South Africa's toughest industries, and ended up running companies that reshaped communication across an entire continent. But Irene's power doesn't stop at Africa's borders. Her leadership case is literally taught in Harvard Business School, a story so compelling that MBA students in Boston analyze her every move, from deal-making strategy to corporate transformation. Her name appears in American academic syllabi alongside global business icons. When Irene joined MCell, later MTN Group, she spearheaded expansion into 21 countries, transforming what was once a regional network into a global communications powerhouse. Later, as executive chair of Smile Communications, she partnered with US-based tech consultants and investors to bring high-speed internet to millions. Behind the scenes, American venture firms helped fund the technology infrastructure, linking her African operations to Silicon Valley's innovation ecosystem. Her influence now flows between continents, from Johannesburg boardrooms to Harvard classrooms, from labor rights to global capital. She's that rare mix of grit and grace, someone who started with no power, then rewired the networks that distribute it. As Irene once put it, you can either be acted upon by history or make the deals that write it. She chose the latter, and somehow made history pay dividends in dollars and influence. But if Irene built her empire through telecom towers and global case studies, the next woman on our list engineered her rise through something even rarer: Silicon Valley-grade precision, with Wall Street watching every move. Number 9. Nonkululeko Nyembezi-Heita, the engineer in the boardroom. There aren't many CEOs who can say they learned their trade in the same halls as NASA scientists, but NQ Nyembezi-Heita can. Before she became one of Africa's most powerful banking executives, she earned her master's degree in electrical engineering from Caltech in California, one of America's most elite institutions. That US education didn't just teach her equations, it taught her how systems, technical, financial, even political, are built and optimized. Those lessons became her secret advantage as she climbed from metallurgy plants to the top floors of Africa's biggest corporations. Today, as chair of Standard Bank Group and a board member at Anglo American, her decisions ripple through international markets, including Wall Street portfolios. Standard Bank's cross-listed shares trade under American investor eyes every single day, meaning when NQU makes a call in Johannesburg, fund managers in New York pay attention. Her calm, precise style stands out in an industry full of ego. She once joked that engineering was her first language, and boardrooms were just the new lab. That combination of intellect and composure turned her into a global bridge between South African enterprise and American capital. So while she's far from a household name, she's the kind of leader who quietly shifts billions, the woman whose Caltech roots gave her a blueprint for global influence. And while NQ engineers success with quiet precision, the next woman thrives on noise, markets, media, and movement. She's not just South Africa's richest woman. She's the loudest voice in its boardrooms, and her echo reaches straight into New York's financial headlines. Number 8. Magda Wierzycka, the activist billionaire. If finance had a superhero, it would sound a lot like Magda Wierzycka, except her superpower isn't invisibility or strength, it's audacity. Born in communist Poland, Magda arrived in South Africa as a teenager refugee with her family. No money, no connections, just grit, and a second-hand dictionary to learn English. Fast forward a few decades, and she's now South Africa's richest woman, the self-made CEO of Signia Limited, which is a fintech-driven asset management firm controlling billions in global investments. But what really makes her story fascinating isn't the number of zeros on her balance sheet. It's the moral math she applies to them. Magda didn't just build a fund, she built a philosophy. Her company runs on transparency, digital efficiency, and a sharp refusal to play along with the old boy networks that long ruled South African finance. She once said, "If you stay quiet, corruption wins." And she's lived by that motto ever since. Her American footprint is significant and growing. As a member of Harvard's Africa Advisory Board, she's part of the academic think tank that shapes how the U.S. views African markets. Her interviews regularly appear on Bloomberg, Forbes, and CNBC, where she speaks not as a South African investor, but as a global voice for ethical capitalism. U.S. hedge funds and institutional investors have quietly partnered with Signia to gain African exposure through ESG-aligned portfolios. Because in a world obsessed with ethical investing, Magda's brand is credibility itself. Her outspokenness has made her both a media darling and a target. When she publicly challenged political corruption during South Africa's Gupta-era scandals, she received threats, lawsuits, and smear campaigns. Yet she didn't blink. Instead, she doubled down, expanding Signia's fintech infrastructure and launching digital investment platforms that rival Silicon Valley's efficiency. Behind the boardroom boldness, Magda's also a philanthropist. She funds STEM education for underprivileged youth and sponsors scholarships that connect African students to U.S. universities, effectively exporting the next generation of ethical innovators. At her core, Magda Wierzycka is capitalism's conscience, proof that you can run an empire on algorithms and still have a heartbeat. She's as comfortable on a CNBC panel in New York as she is taking on entrenched power back home. And while Magda's empire thrives on activism and analytics, the next woman on our list rules her domain through sheer glamour, where Hollywood's sparkle meets humanitarian scale. Number 7. Charlize Theron, the Hollywood humanitarian. You probably know Charlize Theron as the badass who went from Furiosa to Atomic Blonde, or as the cunning antagonist Cypher in Fast and Furious films. But what you might not realize is that her biggest production isn't on screen. It's humanitarian. The South African-born Oscar winner turned Hollywood icon has quietly built one of the most respected philanthropic brands in the business, the Charlize Theron Africa Outreach Project, also known as CTAOP. Charlize grew up in Benoni, a small town outside Johannesburg. By the time she hit Hollywood, she wasn't just chasing scripts, she was rewriting the playbook on what celebrity influence could actually do. CTAOP, headquartered in Los Angeles, is a U.S.-registered nonprofit that funnels millions from American foundations, film studios, and donors into youth programs across Southern Africa. Think of it as a red carpet-funded engine for real-world change. Her partners aren't just African NGOs. They include major U.S. entities like the Entertainment Industry Foundation and corporate giants that back her grants. Every award season, every interview, every campaign tie-in becomes part of her larger ecosystem, fame converting into funding. And she doesn't just lend her name, she serves as an executive-level operator, studying impact metrics and ensuring U.S. dollars translate into African progress. Charlize once said, "Hollywood gave me an audience. I use that audience for causes that matter back home." And she's delivered, from HIV prevention to gender-based violence education. Her foundation's measurable outcomes rival those of mid-sized global NGOs. And while Charlize brings star power, the next woman brings sheer financial muscle. A billionaire investor whose checks move mountains and whose phone calls move governments. Number 6. Wendy Appelbaum, the impact investor. Wendy Appelbaum doesn't just talk philanthropy, she runs it like a Fortune 500 company. The daughter of Liberty Group founder Donald Gordon, Wendy inherited a legacy of enterprise and transformed it into something far more strategic: impact capitalism. Her mantra? Every dollar should work twice, once for profit, once for progress. As one of South Africa's wealthiest women, Wendy could have easily stayed behind the gates of privilege. Instead, she built the Wendy Foundation and her investment firm around measurable social outcomes, creating what's now called return on humanity. Her investments stretch from women's health to agricultural equity. But what makes her unique is how deeply she's tied into American impact networks. She's a fixture at Harvard's philanthropic and global leadership forums, where she exchanges strategies with U.S. hedge fund managers and social capitalists. Her foundation partners with U.S.-based NGOs to co-fund health and education initiatives in Africa. Behind the scenes, she uses her wealth like a tuning fork, striking balance between Wall Street efficiency and Ubuntu-driven ethics. Wendy's global approach is reshaping how African philanthropy interfaces with American capital. She insists that sustainable change needs accountability, not charity, and pushes U.S. partners to adopt that ethos. It's no wonder global think tanks often cite her as one of the world's top female philanthropists who give like investors and invest like reformers. She doesn't just write checks, she writes models that others copy. Her projects are case studies in measurable compassion, and her influence echoes in Ivy League corridors and investor summits alike. But if Wendy built bridges through accountability, the next heiress built them through art, transforming diamond wealth into a cultural dynasty that spans continents. Number 5. Mary Slack, the art dynasty heiress. If legacy had a last name, it would be Oppenheimer. And Mary Slack, daughter of the legendary mining magnate Harry Oppenheimer, wears that legacy like fine art, literally. While her family forged empires through gold and diamonds, Mary chose to forge something softer, subtler, and just as valuable, cultural capital. Mary's fortune may trace back to De Beers and Anglo-American, but her personal empire thrives on creativity. In the 1990s, she opened the Amiridian Gallery in Soho, New York, a space that became a quiet revolution in the art world. It was the first U.S. gallery to seriously spotlight African contemporary artists in a global luxury context, bridging South Africa's artistic soul with America's commercial muscle. Under Mary's guidance, Amiridian wasn't just a gallery, it was a cultural embassy. Hollywood collectors mingled with African creators, Wall Street buyers learned the vocabulary of African modernism, and suddenly, South African art wasn't exotic anymore. It was essential. Even after selling the gallery, her influence continued through philanthropic collaborations with U.S. institutions. She's donated to American museums, supported African art exhibitions abroad, and sponsored conservation efforts that often co-run with U.S. environmental organizations. Her philanthropy moves with precision, quiet, refined, but unmistakably powerful. Her philosophy is simple. Our wealth buys us a voice in the cultural conversation. New York is where that voice is heard. In many ways, Mary Slack embodies the evolution of South African wealth, no longer confined to mines and markets, but invested in meaning. She turned generational capital into artistic diplomacy, and through her, the Oppenheimer name found a second home in American culture. And now, from the elegance of Soho's art world, we head straight to the runway, where another South African powerhouse built her empire on fashion, fame, and fierce global branding. Number 4. Precious Moloi-Motsepe, the fashion philanthropist. If elegance had a doctorate, it would look a lot like Dr. Precious Moloi-Motsepe, the Johannesburg-born physician who turned her medical career into a global movement of fashion, empowerment, and philanthropy. A trained doctor who swapped lab coats for luxury runways, she redefined what it means to merge heart, heritage, and haute couture. After years practicing medicine, Precious realized that the health of a society isn't just physical, it's creative. So she launched African Fashion International, AFI, the continent's most prestigious fashion platform, spotlighting African designers on global stages including New York and Paris. Through AFI, she turned African fashion from local flair into international currency, exporting style, culture, and entrepreneurship. Her American footprint runs deep. As a member of the Harvard Kennedy School Women's Leadership Board, she's part of the same network that mentors U.S. senators and Fortune 500 CEOs. She's also a signatory of the Giving Pledge, aligning with Bill and Melinda Gates, Warren Buffett, and America's wealthiest philanthropists. And when AFI showcases hit global headlines, it's often U.S. outlets, from Vogue to Business of Fashion, leading the coverage. Precious isn't just dressing Africa for the runway, she's dressing it for the future. Her philanthropic foundation funds education, health, and entrepreneurship initiatives across Africa, with U.S. donors and international NGOs often joining her projects. It's soft power, but with serious influence. She once remarked, "Global fashion is an economic argument, and the U.S. is our largest runway." And she's right. Every designer she launches into American markets is proof that African creativity belongs in the same boardrooms and boutiques as Milan and Manhattan. Precious Moloi-Motsepe didn't just change fashion, she turned it into a foreign policy tool. The runway is her diplomacy, and empowerment is her design. Now, from couture to corporate capital, our next executive didn't inherit power, she engineered it, literally from Rutgers to Naspers. Number 3. Phuti Mahanyele-Dabengwa, the global corporate queen. Phuti Mahanyele-Dabengwa is the kind of leader who makes capitalism look cool. Sharp, strategic, and unshakably grounded. She's the first black and first female CEO of Naspers South Africa, one of the continent's largest tech and media conglomerates, valued in the tens of billions. But her rise didn't begin in an African boardroom. It started in the U.S. After earning her degree from Rutgers University, Phuti began her career in New York's financial jungle, working at Fieldstone Private Capital Group, where she learned to read markets the way engineers read blueprints. Wall Street taught her that power isn't about access, it's about positioning, and she's been strategically positioned ever since. When she returned to South Africa, she carried that American precision with her. As CEO of Shanduka Group and later co-founder of Sigma Capital, she managed investments in energy, mining, and infrastructure, sectors often tied to global investors, including American funds. By the time Naspers tapped her for the top job, she wasn't just a South African executive. She was a global operator fluent in the language of Silicon Valley and Wall Street alike. Her leadership style blends empathy with execution. At panels like the U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit in Washington, D.C., she speaks not just about corporate growth but about how diversity and innovation can power economies. She's turning Naspers into a global bridge between African startups and American venture capital. Phuti once said, "My time in New York taught me how capital flows choose winners." Today, she's ensuring that Africa, and especially African women, are among those winners. She's a living masterclass in global leadership, part Wall Street, part Ubuntu. The kind of woman who turns every meeting into a masterstroke of diplomacy and design. But if Phuti is the strategist, the next woman is the visionary, blending Ivy League brains with media magic. Number 2. Khanyi Dhlomo, the Harvard-polished media maven. Khanyi Dhlomo isn't just a media mogul. She's a case study in how to turn storytelling into an empire. Once the face of True Love magazine, she transformed from editor to entrepreneur, founding Ndalo Media, which published Destiny and Destiny Man, magazines that reshaped how Africa viewed success, sophistication, and modern identity. But Khanyi's true reinvention began in Cambridge, Massachusetts. After years in journalism, she enrolled at Harvard Business School, earning her MBA in 2007. That experience didn't just sharpen her business skills, it expanded her global network. She met investors, mentors, and collaborators who helped her bring luxury retail and media ventures to new heights. Post-HBS, she launched Luminance, a high-end South African fashion retailer with global ambitions. Her pitch was bold. Africa deserves its own Saks Fifth Avenue. And she wasn't wrong. Luminance became a symbol of how homegrown talent could play in global markets while partnering with American and European brands. Her U.S. connections remained strong. From Harvard alumni circles to investor summits, Khanyi operates at the intersection of African creativity and American enterprise. She has also been profiled by Forbes, Fortune, and the New York Times, each hailing her as one of the continent's most refined and forward-thinking businesswomen. She once said, "My MBA taught me how to monetize influence without selling out the brand." And that's exactly what she's done, turning her editorial credibility into ownership, her ideas into equity, and her story into a syllabus for the next generation of African entrepreneurs. Khanyi Dhlomo is proof that you can graduate from Harvard and still sound like home. Sophisticated, grounded, and unstoppable. But before you think you've seen the pinnacle, there's one woman who beats everyone on this list and whose empire combines fame, ownership, and influence like no other. Number 1. Basetsana Kumalo, the beauty queen who bought the boardroom. When Basetsana Kumalo won Miss South Africa in 1994 and stood as runner-up at Miss World, most people thought they were witnessing the rise of a celebrity. What they were actually seeing was the birth of a future business empire. Bassie didn't stop at fame, she used it as seed capital. She co-founded Twelapel Productions, the media house behind Top Billing, one of South Africa's longest-running lifestyle shows. It wasn't just a TV hit, it was a business blueprint. She went from being in front of the camera to owning what happened behind it. Her company grew into a media empire with real assets: property, advertising, retail, and production rights, all under her investment umbrella, Basetsana Woman Investment Holdings. That move turned her from TV royalty into corporate royalty. But her influence doesn't stop at the border. Bassie's American connection is through her global leadership circuit, speaking at Clinton Global Initiative events, UN forums, and World Economic gatherings that tie African entrepreneurship to U.S. policy and philanthropy. She's part of a generation of women who prove that representation can also mean negotiation, the kind that shapes capital and culture. Her advocacy for women in business has earned her invitations to U.S.-Africa trade panels, media features on international outlets, and partnerships that link South African innovation to American investors. She's not just a role model, she's a brand that operates like a holding company. Bassie once said, "I use the platform of pageantry to buy a seat at the table, not to stay a guest." And that's the heart of her story. From the runway to the boardroom, from tiaras to term sheets. She turned visibility into value, and she did it with grace, grit, and a business plan. And this concludes our journey through the richest South African women in America. From Caltech classrooms to Hollywood sets, Harvard boardrooms to Johannesburg runways, these women have proven one thing: power doesn't need a passport. They are more than billionaires and celebrities. They're architects of global influence. Whether it's telecom towers, fashion empires, or foundations shaping the next generation, each woman here turned her South African roots into an international legacy. So, tell us, which of these women's journeys inspired you the most? And if you had to pick one to mentor you, who would it be? The doctor, the CEO, the actress, or the queen who bought the boardroom? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and for more such interesting peeks into the lives of the rich, subscribe to the channel.